Alright, welcome to Nomad Sculpt. This is a Sumo Citrus Decoupon Orange. It's absolutely delicious, and this is our inspiration for today's tutorial. So firstly, don't stress if your Nomad Sculpt looks a bit different than mine. You can adjust all the colors. Like I have my background, this purple color, so you can adjust the colors. And also I have a grid in the background, and this is just the grid here. So first go up here and make sure that you're in orthographic. So that just means there won't be any perspective distortion when we're sculpting. It'll just make it easier to sculpt. So all of our tools are going to be over here. And you can tap here to kind of minimize and bring it back like this. Yours might be organized differently because I've changed these around a lot. And there are some ones that I've added here. And you can check some of my other videos if you want to know how to do that. Okay, so let's delete this sphere and add a new sphere. And the reason I'm doing that is because this sphere is very high resolution, and we don't really need it for now, so we'll just use a regular sphere. So we'll go to the scene, which is here. And this is the autosave, so it's going to ask you to save. We're going to name this one Sumo Citrus. Shout out to Sumo Citrus. Okay, so back to our scene. Here we have all of the 3D meshes that we're going to add to the scene. So if you hit add, you can add these primitives. And those are just simple shapes. So let's add a sphere. And now we have a bigger sphere here. And let's rename it. So let's just tap on these 3 little dots. And then you can rename it. And let's rename it body. I think body's good. So now we have 2 here. And you notice that this sphere is white. And this font, this text is yellow or orange. And that's because this one we haven't validated yet. So that's down here. So let's go ahead and hit validate. And essentially what that means is it's part of the project, but it's not officially part of the project. There's a few things you can do before you validate, but we'll get into that in a moment. So for now, let's just hit validate. And now that you see they're both white. So let's go to the top sphere, the one that's 98.3K, and let's just delete it. And again, we're back in the scene menu and we'll just hit delete. Okay, so now we have the body. Now you'll notice that my sphere is completely smooth. If yours does not look smooth, it's probably just smooth shading. So just tap here. And then go down to smooth shading. And I have mine on auto and it's on. So yours might be off if yours looks like this, which is a little pixelated. So you can just go here, smooth shading, you can just put it on, or in my case, I'll just put it on auto, and it's smooth. And you'll also see me tap this. This is the snap cube. So this just allows you to know which side you're looking at. This is the left side, this is the front. So eventually you might see me organize my project. I might tilt it a little bit and then hit front, so I know I'm looking at the exact front of the project. Okay, so I'm just going to pinch a little bit to make it a little smaller and put it right in the middle. So the first thing I want to do is use the Gizmo. The Gizmo is like your controller. That's how you control any of the 3D objects that are on the screen. So in your menu, just look for this green RGB, this red, green, and blue little object. So we'll tap on Gizmo. So this is our Gizmo. And it's really simple once you get used to it. These little spheres here, those stretch. And notice I did 2 fingers to undo. You just tap with 2 fingers to undo. You can tap with 3 to redo, or you can just use these here. So these are to stretch. And then you have this larger orange ring, and that's just scale. Okay, I'm going to hit undo. And then you have these arrows, so those move the mesh. But of course it's 3D, so you can tilt it. And there's another one that's pointing right at us, and that goes front to back. Okay, so if you do mess with your Gizmo, just make sure that you put it back to the exact center. And if you're not sure, just undo all the way, and you can just hit validate again, and that way you'll know that it's exactly in the center. So let's make the little knot on the top of the orange. So we'll go to our scene, add, cylinder. You can see our cylinder is quite big, so we'll have to shrink it and manipulate it to get it where we want it to be. So let's go down. You'll see the gizmo here. It's a little hidden. So just tap the gizmo there. Use the green arrow to move it up. Okay, and then we'll use the orange ring to shrink it. I think that looks about right. And now let's take the green arrow and just move it down. And it's really cool. You can actually go down here and hit X-ray, and you can see where it is inside the larger part of the orange. Now I want to shrink it a little bit, so I'm just going to use this sphere to just shrink it a bit. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'll turn X-ray off. And I'm actually going to turn the grid off as well. Also, this might be up top. You can always change where this is by touching this little arrow. So next, let's go to the little option next to the gizmo here, which is the cylinder. And let's take the top, this little orange node, and just pull it, and it'll make the top a little bit bigger. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So now we're going to go into the three little dots, and you can only do what we're going to do because I haven't validated yet. So these are some of the extra things that you can do, but I'm not going to go too deep into it. Just tap these three dots. Post subdivision, you can put that up to 2. Division X, bring that down to maybe 12. I think 12 looks good. And then hit the X. And then you can just hit validate. So let's use the shape that we made for the knot on the top of the orange for the legs. So let's go into our scene, and it'll be easier if we start labeling things. So let's tap here and just clone this first, and then hit cylinder. You can rename to the knot. And then let's take this one, tap the three dots, name, and let's name it leg. So now we just need to move it to the bottom, and we need to flip it. So we'll take the green arrow, and of course you want to make sure that leg is highlighted here, not. Okay, so we'll go to leg. We'll take the green arrow and move it down. And now we want to flip it over. So of course you can use these, I don't even know if I mentioned them before, these rings. There's a blue ring, red ring, green ring, and those just rotate. So obviously you can rotate this way, but this is like more of a freestyle rotate. If I tap with 2 fingers to undo, you can over here, you can hit snap, and there's 2 snaps. It's the one with the little angle. So right now this is 90 degrees. So once you have this selected, this will only rotate 90 degrees. 1, 2. So essentially 180 because we did it twice in the left direction. So now it's just the same thing as up here. It's just upside down. So we can hit snap again to turn that off. And now let's take the red arrow and just move it over a little bit. And let's shrink it. I think I like it shrunk. I'm not sure. I'm going to move it up a little bit. I think that looks kind of cute. So these 2 parts are essentially the same, but you'll notice that in this one, the green one is pointing up, and for this, the green arrow is pointing down. And that's because we flipped this one. So we don't want his leg to feel like it's just upside down. We want to bake it so that this is the proper orientation for his leg.
I don't bake. I don't bake nothing.
So let's just go up here to the gizmo options. You'll see matrix. So just hit bake. Now nothing changed here, and that can be a little confusing, but the center point of this is called a pivot. And right now the pivot is just pointing to where it was, but let's reset the pivot to its new orientation. So just go to pivot, center, pivot. So all that did was reset the pivot. And now you'll see that both of these, the green is pointing up. And just so you know, I mean, it wouldn't have been the end of the world if this was left upside down. It's not that big of a deal, but it's just more efficient to have this properly oriented. And it's kind of a small introduction to what baking is. Okay, so now let's go ahead and mirror this leg so that we have one on the other side. So essentially, if there's something on the left or the right, and it's going to match on both sides, you can just use mirrors. So let's go to Scene, and here's our leg. So let's hit Add, and then we'll go down to Repeaters. They're in red, and we just want to find Mirror. So if you tap Mirror, now you'll see that there's only one leg here, but it's within a mirror. So it's showing one leg, but it's showing it twice. And that looks great. So let's go ahead and take this mirror and let's validate it. Join children, yes. So now it's just named mirror, but really it's the legs. So let's just rename it legs. Okay, so we'll be a little more creative with the arms. Let's take the body, whoops, which I should have renamed body. And let's clone it. So let's hit clone here, and now we have body 1. Let's change that to arms. Okay, so we're on arms. We're going to use the red arrow to move it over and shrink with the orange ring. So let's do around this size. I think that'll work. So now let's use move. And I'm going to change the radius. So essentially, all of these tools, you can adjust the radius, which is, so if I tap here, you'll see this sphere. So that's how big the tool is. So this is the radius. That's just the size of the tool. Whoops. The intensity, which is here, that's how kind of strong or hard the tool is actually going to do its function. So I can't remember where it was, so I'm going to put it on 75. Okay, so we're using the move tool. The radius is about, well, let's go a little bit smaller. Let's go about 250. And let's tap on our arm here. So what we want to do is just kind of stretch this arm down. So there's two ways. You can stretch the front part and you can stretch the back part. So you'll see, if you stretch one side, it kind of becomes sort of like a teardrop, which is what we want. So I'm going to make it a little smaller, actually. I'm going to do 225 and get crazy. So on the arm, let's actually move it down a little bit. Yeah, let's move it down to about here. And let's hit move again. And we just want to drag this part up and kind of into the body. Okay, I think I like that. You can get X-ray if you want to see the inside, and you can still use move to kind of adjust it, kind of push it. Okay, I think I like that. You can kind of adjust it however you want the arm to be sitting on the body. I think I like that. So I'll hit X-ray again, and now you can see his little arm. I can use the gizmo. I can rotate it a little bit. I can move it back a little bit if I want. I think moving it back a little bit is nice. Kind of gives his belly a little more prominence. You can also do fun things like take the legs, maybe stretch them a little bit. But I think that's pretty good. So now let's go back to the arm, and we want to mirror it the same way we did before. Let's go to our scene, arms, add. We go down to repeaters, they're in red, and we'll hit mirror. Okay, so we can go to this arm. So now he has two perfectly good functioning arms. Now for a little bit of extra credit, you can go to your tools and use something like inflate and give him little like finger nubs, things like that. So there's infinite ways you can really be creative with the different tools. Those are fun to play around with. For now, I'm just gonna remove his fingers. I might add them in later. Okay, so let's make sure we save. You wanna save often with Nomad. Even if you have autosave, it's always good to go into the folder and manually hit save. So let's make one last element that I think will look fun, that I think will look cool. Not fun, fun and cool. So we'll go to our scene, we'll hit add, and let's add another cylinder. Now you notice that it automatically went into our arm mirror. So you can just slightly long press it and then you can bring it out. I'll bring it all the way up to the top. So let's take this mirror. Let's rename just the mirror part arms. And also, this arm is in a mirror and you can still adjust it with the Gizmo, just so you know. Okay, let's take this cylinder. Okay, so we'll take the cylinder, we'll move it up. We'll shrink it with the larger orange ring. Okay, I'm gonna tilt it a little bit. I wanna tilt it forward. So let's hit snap. That way it's 90 degrees and I'm just gonna tilt it this way. So it's essentially, so it's facing us. Instead of facing like this, I just brought it so it's facing us. So I want it really thin too. So let's take this green sphere and just make it really thin. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Let's use validate. So we'll hit validate. Let's use move. We'll put the radius around 250 or so. And let's pull the bottom of this. Let's go down here and hit solo. So that's just gonna focus on our little leaf element. So I'm gonna make the radius a little smaller. So I'm just gonna sort of pull these together so it resembles a little leaf. Something like that, I think looks pretty good. I'll hit solo again. And now let's use our Gizmo to just kind of move it up. Maybe we'll shrink it this way a little bit. Maybe we'll shrink it with the orange ring. But I think that works. Make it a little taller. Okay, perfect. I think that works. So now let's move it down. Okay, I'm gonna move it a little bit towards the back because I wanna use the move tool and just give the whole thing a nice bend. So I'm gonna go back to the move tool. I'll make the move tool a bit bigger, maybe like 350. And now I'm just gonna push the back of this so that we get a nice bend in that leaf. Okay, we'll go back to Gizmo. You notice the Gizmo's in the wrong spot, but we went over how to reset it. So we'll go pivot, center, pivot. Okay, so now it's in the center of our leaf. Let's just move it to the center-ish and let's rotate it. But notice it's only rotating 90, so we need to turn this off. So we can just rotate it a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty good. And you notice we can't go straight up and down because we rotated it. So here's the trick for that. You can hit align and then you can just move it and the arrows will always stay where they are. So sometimes that's a little easier if you just want to go straight back or straight up and down. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'll turn off align. And I'm going to use move. I'm going to turn off symmetry. If you want to get crazy, you can just kind of, push it in a different direction like that. I think it looks kind of cool. I'll move it back and maybe I'll give it a little bit more of a bend. So essentially I'm just kind of positioning it so it looks like a leaf. So it looks like a leaf is coming out the top. That's pretty much all I'm doing. I went crazy with the leaf, but I like it. So next, let's voxel remesh the knot and the body. And the reason why we're doing this is so we can make them one piece. So first let's select. So we'll go to our scene, we'll select the body and the knot. And then we're going to voxel remesh them together. So we'll go next to the scene, voxel. Remeshing is down here. So we're going to raise the resolution to about 200. Remesh. Okay. And now you'll see that it's one piece. So let's smooth this out. So let's go to our smooth tool. We'll put it at like, we'll do like 150, 160. So now we can smooth this out and make sure symmetry is on. So we're just going to smooth out our orange body here. Okay, great. So let's rename the knot, which is the body now. So let's rename this knot. Name body. Okay, the arms are good. We have the cylinder. Let's rename this. So we'll just tap this. Name leaf. Okay, let's make sure we save. Okay, so let's add some texture to our orange body. So one cool way to do that is to use an alpha. So you might have heard the term alpha. Let's use that to make our texture. So all you have to do is find a picture of an orange or like an orange skin. Okay, so let's go to the internet. Orange skin. We'll go to images. So now we have a lot of images of orange skin. So we'll try to find one that looks like we can use it, that would be free. So here's free pick. Sounds like it would be free. This looks great. So I'm just going to long press this and save to photos. Okay. You can send it to you don't have to do it that way. You can just, as long as it's on your iPad, then you'll be fine. So let's go to brush. First, let's make sure that we're on the body. So we'll go to brush, and then we'll go to this little square with the little stars in it. Alpha brush. Let's tap here. Import. Photos, because I saved it to photos. And that was my test one, so we'll do the one that we just brought in. Add. Okay, we can close this. So now you see the texture here. So you might have to kind of scale it a little bit. Actually, it looks pretty good. Yeah, I think that looks great. Okay, so with this brush, let's make sure symmetry is off. Let's take the radius and put it up. Let's try 200 first. And let's take the intensity and put it down. Let's try like 10. Okay, so I have surface selected. I also have mid value at 1, but you can experiment with these. But I brought mine all the way up to 1. Okay, so now using this brush, let's just see what we can get. So I'm just doing some circles. I'm not pressing too hard because then you can kind of warp the sphere a lot. Maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger. If you press too hard, it'll warp it, and then that'll look funny. So be tender with your Sumo orange. You can also experiment with the intensity. If you put it up a little bit, then that's just going to be a little more defined. So maybe we'll make it a little bit bigger, raise the intensity. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to zoom in and try to get some more details on the top. It looks like when I zoom in, the details are less clear, so I'll just zoom out. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. And another trick that you can do with move is you can always kind of slightly adjust. You know, if things kind of get out of whack and you're like, you know, you want to just fix it up a little bit, you can always use the move tools and use other tools to experiment with. Leaf looks good. Okay, so let's add some color to our character and add some lighting. So first, let's go to our scene and just highlight everything. And then go down here, you'll see the line going through this little cube. So we'll tap there. And this is your paint options. So of course we want to make a nice orange, but for now, let's do an orange that isn't so bright. Actually, you know what? Let's just do a bright orange. Let's just live dangerously. I like my oranges around that color there. I want to take roughness and move that down. So notice how it gets more glossy when you move the roughness down. So you just want to find a spot that looks normal for an orange. I think that's pretty good. And then just hit paint all. Okay, looks good. So we want to add some lights. Lighting is really important to make your 3D sculpt look interesting and dynamic. So let's start by turning our ambient light off. So we haven't added any lights to the scene, but he's still lit. We can still see it. So those are the lights we have to turn off. So we'll tap here and see this environment. And yours might be different. This is my personal one that I created, but that's okay because either way, we're going to turn it off. So now everything should be completely black. Let's go ahead and save. So now we'll go back to that same menu, the little sun, and we want to do add light. So this is our first light. This is a key light. So the light is right here. And let's use our gizmo so we can move it. Now, this light is a directional light. So there's just light coming from this direction. It actually doesn't matter where you move the light. It stays the same. The only thing that makes a difference is where this arrow is pointing. So if you were to rotate it, the light changes. And also, I like this position. So I'm going to save this position by tapping the little camera, add view, and we'll just name this 1. So now if you move around and you want to get back to that same view, you can just go there and hit 1, and it goes back to the same view. Okay, so back to the lights. We'll tap this. This is our first light here. Let's rename it key. This is our key light, and key lights are just the main light lighting your scene or your object. So here we have the lighting options. Intensity, we want it to be a little bit brighter. So let's bring this up. Maybe 2, 2.1, 2.2, somewhere in that area. 2.2 or so. So next, let's clone this light and let's name it edge. So we'll tap on the little pencil and name it edge. And let's move it so they're not at the same spot. So we'll just move this over to the left with the gizmo. And notice that this is still pointing in the same direction. So we want to use the green ring and rotate it. I'm going to go back to the center. We want to use these rings to rotate it until we just see a nice, crisp edge line. Might have to use the blue a little bit too. There you go. See how it's right on the edge? There we go, perfect. So now we have that nice edge line right on the left side surface. Okay, so now we'll take edge and let's go ahead and clone that one too, and we'll name this one R2. Let's move this back to the right side. I'm going to move it down a little bit just so we don't get it confused. And this one, not quite an edge, but a little more is going to be showing on him, but it's just a little bit brighter over here. I think that looks nice. Yeah, maybe something around there. We can bring the intensity down a little bit. And you can always adjust the intensities of your lights to make them look how you want. So we'll go back up, and I like to add another light. So let's add another light here. And let's change it. Let's switch it up. Let's tap directional and let's put spot. So now we can move this light anywhere we want. And you notice that this light does matter where you put it. So let's rotate it so it's kind of pointing at him. Move it up and over. Maybe we'll move it this way a little bit. So depending on where you want this light beam to go. But I think that looks pretty good. You can make it bigger with this little orange node if you want. But yeah, I think that looks nice. Maybe I'll lower the intensity just a smidge. Or I'll raise the intensity and maybe I'll lower the key. I'm essentially switching the key, but there's just so much you can do. Maybe I'll lower this one just a smidge. And now this light is actually serving as the key because it's a little bit brighter than the other ones. But I think that looks good. Okay, so now let's turn on post-process. And post-process will just make it look more like we want it to look when we've finished. So let's just tap here. I'm gonna put the quality up and turn on post-process. Okay, and you can look at my options to see what I have. I might turn off bloom. You can adjust all these and play around with all these if you want. I think it looks good. Ambient occlusion, again, that's the shadows from the ambient light. Let's turn on the environment again. See how these shadows are very, very dark? They're very black. Let's go to the sun. Let's turn on the environment. Now this is very bright, so I'm just going to bring it down a little bit to maybe 1 point, maybe a little over 1, I think is fine. Okay, so let's take our little leaf here. I'm going to move it down so it's kind of going, whoops, it's a little too high. I'll move it down so it's kind of sticking out. And we kind of want there to be a little part where that's going in. So what I think we'll do is use crease. And let's make like an X here. So we're using crease. We'll put the radius at like 75 or so. And let's just make an X. Make sure that you're on the body first off, which I almost didn't do. Make sure you have the body selected. And let's just make an X on the top. And I'll just keep going over this little X. Like so. And then I'll just move this in it. Okay, I like it. So that was a great use of crease. So now we have the little arms. Let's color these a different color. The leaf, maybe we can make a little bit green. So we're just using the same little color cube, but we're only on the leaf now, I hope. Okay, I like that green, but I don't want it super, super, super bright. So maybe something like that. I'll bring up the roughness. Doesn't need to be as rough as the rest of it. So the arms, I don't know what color I want to make the arms, but let's say I want to make them a little bit darker than the body, than the orange. You can tap on this, you can tap the eyedropper, and then you just drag and it'll just grab whatever color and like texture that you're on. So now it's on the same texture. You can make it a little darker if you want. Ooh, I think I like this nice brown. Maybe I'll make it a little more rough. Maybe we'll do a more citrusy color. Like maybe we'll do a yellow. Something weird like that. And then you can take the legs and maybe you want to match that color. Or maybe you want to make them a little darker. I kind of like a little darker. It's interesting. I like them. Let's make sure we save. Okay, so let's give him a little face. So first, let's go to our scene. let's add, do I want to add a cylinder or a sphere? Let's add a sphere. So now we'll use our gizmo and let's position it so we can make it where his eye would be. And by now you should be getting a little bit more familiar with the gizmo. It's very tricky at first, but then it becomes just normal after you use it for a while. Okay, we'll just use the arrows. We need to figure out where we actually want the eyes. I think I wanted to have a very wide, and I'm actually going to smush the eyes a little bit this way just because it always looks better to me. Okay, oh, and I have a line on, so if I want the gizmo to move with the shape, you want to make sure you don't have a line on. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Okay, so here's the front. And I might have made the eye a little bit too far off to the side. Poor guy. Okay, so here's the front. Now we haven't validated this sphere, so we have another option here, which is mirror. So it just mirrors it. I think that looks good. So we'll go ahead and validate. So if you notice, the eyes aren't symmetrical, or they don't look symmetrical, and that's because the orange, when we added the texture, it kind of warped the orange a little bit, which is great. So you do notice a little bit of a difference here. There's a few ways you can fix it. We can go to this mirror here and we can just go ahead and validate it if we like it. Just hit yes. So now we have the eyes, we can rename it. Okay, so both of these eyes, number one, you can go pivot, center, pivot, and then you can sort of rotate the whole thing. So using the gizmo, you can kind of rotate and see how this kind of changes. So that's one way to do it. You can also take move. You can make it kind of big, and then you can just sort of nudge it into place. Whoop. Make sure you turn symmetry off, because if you do symmetry, it's going to do both sides. So turn symmetry off, and then you can just kind of nudge it in a little bit if you want. That's another way to do it. Okay, looks good. I really like the eyes, actually. So now let's use the tube tool and make the mouth. There's lots of different ways you can make mouths, but I want to use the tube tool. And we'll stick with curve. And let's hit snap. Tube tool, curve, snap. So I'm going to zoom in a bit here. We're going to touch down on the screen, and I'm just going to make a shape that I kind of want his mouth to be. Sort of like that. Now we want these to be connected. So let's hit closed. So now they're connected. And these are a lot of little spheres. That's the only downside of using curve. It adds a lot of spheres, but I think it makes it look a bit quirky. And also snap means that it snaps to the surface. So that's why we used snap. I kind of like it how it is, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to go ahead and validate it. Of course, you can change and adjust, and just to show you how, you can kind of get rid of some of these by dragging them into each other, because it really doesn't need this many, as you can see. But you can feel free to adjust the mouth, adjust the position. Let's get rid of a bunch of these. Just drag them into each other, and then you can adjust the mouth to make it any way that you want. But this looks nice and quirky, so I think I'm just going to leave it. You can use the gizmo. I might use the gizmo and shrink it. I kind of like that, a little closer to the eyes. Let's go back to the tube tool settings by tapping here. You can use radius, as long as you have one little node and you have one, Then you can sort of inflate or make them a little bit smaller if you want. So we'll make them a little bit bigger. And I kind of want to make it the whole mouth a little bit smaller. So I'll get rid of some of these little thingies and just make the mouth a little smaller. Okay, so let's go ahead and validate it. Once you have a mouth that you like, we can validate it. And I want to change the colors of these, so just tap on the eyes and let's go back down here. Maybe we want to do the same color. I don't know if we want to do them glossy, not too glossy. Find a nice color that we want to make them. Maybe something like that. Take the mouth and color it the same color. Okay, I think that looks really cute. You can always add a floor, so let's add, we'll just give them a box. And we can, let's validate the box. Let's make the box so it's not looking funny. So let's tap here, smooth shading. Let's just turn that off for the box, just so it's a nice square box. It doesn't need to be smoothed out at all. So we'll just shrink it. We'll make it a little bigger. Move it down. Okay, we'll find his little feet and we'll just put it right there. Maybe we'll make the box purple or something. Okay, we'll make the box purple and we'll make it a little bit smaller for him with the gizmo. I think that's a super cute character. I think he's funny looking, but I love it. You can go to the camera and you can adjust the perspective. So now there's perspective and you can adjust it from 10 to really, really wide, like a GoPro or something like that, which makes it look interesting. I'll put it down to, let's go to the front again. I'm gonna put mine to perspective and I'll turn it down just a little bit of perspective, like so. Okay, so we got a little bit of perspective going. Of course, you can adjust the lights. You can also adjust the colors of the lights. So maybe for the edge light, which is on this side, maybe we make it a little bit brighter, and then maybe we add a purple color to that light. So first let's save. And if you want to export an image, just go all the way down to render. So exporting sounds like you want to export an image, but really you want to render an image. So you go down here, you can do the whole screen. And if you don't want the purple, if you don't want the background, you would just hit transparent background. If you wanted all this stuff on the side, you would hit show interface. So we're going to leave those off and we'll just do screen and we will export. Looks beautiful. So now I'm just going to share it to my computer. Okay, perfect. And if you want to do a turntable, just go to this little Nomad symbol. I like to use scene and just hit turntable, and then you can sort of adjust it as you want. And then you have a nice, beautiful turntable. If I want to do a screen recording of the turntable, I tap here, and on this screen, I just swipe for my little recording shortcut. So that starts recording, and then I just hit the turntable, do what I did before, and then it's going to record this turntable. So it'll be a lot cleaner, as you'll see right now. All right, thank you guys for joining me in this Nomad Sculpt crash course. I hope it was fun. I hope you got a lot out of it, and I hope that you continue to sculpt and have fun, and I hope that you realize that 3D doesn't have to be as intimidating as it was before. I was actually going to make this class for Skillshare, but I decided to put it here on YouTube. I have another class coming out on Skillshare soon that I'm really excited about it. So make sure you check out Skillshare. I have tons of 3D classes and 2D classes in Procreate as well. All right, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to enjoy my Sumo Citrus Orange, and no, this is not a sponsored video or anything like that. I just love them and they're delicious, and I needed to make something fairly simple for another crash course. All right, keep drawing, keep sculpting. I'll see you all in the next video.